when many of us were running in 2014, we were all aware of unprecedented public concern about the challenges facing our school system. For years, people have worried about overcrowded classrooms, inadequate core capacity, and growing colonies of portables. They saw the links between aging infrastructure, insufficient personnel, and the growing achievement gap, which had been researched recently by our own OLO and is starkest in many schools in my district. But many of us then in the State Assembly and those of you on the County Council, we often answered the questions we would get from voters by saying, well, we wish the school board would do more to address these needs. And to be fair, when we pushed for changes in the past, previous school boards had given us the impression they didn't always welcome our suggestions. But voters expect us to solve problems, not to point fingers. In 2014, as voters' calls for action became louder and louder, I know several of us said if we were elected to this council, we would work toward greater harmony between the school board and the council, and we would work to attach some strings to the funding we provide to the school system. None of us like writing blank checks to our kids or our contractors, and I don't believe the public ever wanted us to do that with the school system. We ran for these seats promising to do exactly what we are now doing, and I want to thank my colleagues and the school board for taking a more activist and collaborative approach this year. I know it was unorthodox, but that's why I also went to the Board of Education CIP hearing last fall to hear what the public was asking the school board for, to assure them that they had many allies on this new council, to urge them to be very candid about their needs in the capital budget, to reduce the threshold to allow more overcrowded schools to get additions, and to help offset the additional costs by cutting the money in the superintendent's budget that was assigned to more turf fields. I'm very relieved that much of that is now happening, and that the board and the superintendent deserve tremendous credit, as do our union leadership and so many parent activists and my colleagues. While we're happy about where we ended up, we shouldn't forget that this budget didn't take the best path to this point. First, the governor's capital budget let us down by failing to meet the state's responsibility to adequately support its largest and fastest growing school system. We need Governor Hogan to give us the funding we deserve in the future. And the county executive sent us a CIP that failed to seriously address the demands of our rising enrollment. But I'm very proud that my colleagues and I worked together with the Board of Ed to improve the weak hand that we were dealt, to absorb what we heard from the public, and to vote to give people a budget that prioritizes the investments that they have been asking for. The budget we received didn't just shortchange the schools, we also received an operating budget that featured serious cuts to our fire and rescue response system. In most areas of life, 4 minutes doesn't make much difference. But it really matters when your house is on fire. And it really matters when you have a heart attack. Yet we received a budget that increased by 50% the fire and rescue response time for thousands of residents up county and in the East County. So I'm very grateful for all of you for preserving for my constituents the level of protection for life-saving services that they currently rely on. I'm also proud that all my colleagues listened to the 200+ persuasive witnesses we heard over 5 nights of testimony and the thousands of emails we received. I know good advocacy when I see it. The advocates really raised their game this year, and they deserve a lot of credit for making this budget possible. We responded to their challenge to improve not just the schools, but our services, especially transit, road improvements, child care, and affordable housing. I particularly appreciate my colleagues' investment in housing affordability. If you missed the real estate section of the Post on April 30th, the cover story was about rising housing prices in D.C. driving young families to the suburbs. It cites research showing that counter to the popular narrative that millennials are flocking to the cities, in fact, unaffordable housing options in cities mean these numbers are now dropping as millennials are buying in the suburbs. And in particular, it quoted experts who said buyers who give up looking in Columbia Heights often start looking rapidly into Tacoma Park, Silver Spring, as well as Hyattsville, Cheverly, and Mount Rainier. We have to maintain our affordability if we want to keep those folks moving to Montgomery instead of Prince George's. Look, there's a lot of cynicism out there. People receive a lot of messages from some presidential candidates and talk radio telling them the government can't do anything right and their voices will never be heard. And just 15 miles from here, the least productive Congress in history provides evidence that they might be right. But thanks to all of you in our little corner of the world, this budget provides evidence that government can work and that people can actually get what most people are asking for. Honestly, I don't know how the administration proposed raising taxes and at the same time cutting some critical services. When I go to community meetings, I know how to explain if we have to raise taxes. I know how to explain if we have to cut services. I've been doing that for years. But I cannot explain to people why we would have to raise taxes and cut critical services in the same budget. But that's exactly the budget we were sent. So thanks to all my colleagues for making the budget much more rational. Having said that, this isn't easy. There is no good time to raise taxes. Recent years have been very difficult on many families, especially in my district, and many face tough decisions and have deep anxiety about the future. I would never have voted for our revenue package or asked our public employees to sacrifice again if I did not believe that investing meaningfully today will significantly improve our tomorrows. I wish we were not in the position we found ourselves in. I would have preferred to have input into and fully approved the labor contracts the county executive negotiated. I wish we didn't have to ask our taxpayers to pitch in more than ever before. But this is what was required to maintain the high-quality public services and to deal responsibly with the growing enrollment of our schools and the widening opportunity gap. The process we've seen this year is unprecedented, and we all together made the road by walking. Going forward, I believe the Council should continue to look for ways to have collaborative input into the county's collective bargaining process and the school's budget to avoid the impasses we've seen in recent years. We have to work more closely together because we all want to ensure that our excellent public employees are fairly compensated and that we can actually deliver on any commitments our county officials make. Finally, as the District 5 representative, I really want to thank you all for your choices that will help our neediest district, including health care for our uninsured, the new senior social worker and caseworker at the East County Regional Service Center, the 4 social workers in child welfare, the enhanced child care subsidies and after-school programs, stump removal, school maintenance, and the free lunches for seniors at Charterhouse. In life, there are no free lunches unless you're a senior at Charterhouse. I'm particularly grateful to the Council's support for reopening the Maydale Nature Center and to begin putting up commemorative signs at all African American heritage sites throughout the county, and for the Council's support for funding several nonprofits my district really relies on. And I'm very glad you apparently agree with me that the continued vibrancy of downtown Silver Spring is a countywide asset, so I'm grateful for your support for the increased programming and security on Veterans Plaza, as well as for your support of the expanded sophomore year for Silver Spring Restaurant Week. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you this September. Come on down, dinner's on me.
Hey! Yeah, is that to them too?
We'll see.
I hope someone is writing that down.
At Panera. Look, this budget will not solve every problem or make progress inevitable, but it's a historic step forward for our county. And I truly hope it heralds a new era of cooperation between the council and the school board. Last, I appreciate the hard work of all the shared council staff, my office staff in particular, especially Chief of Staff Dave Kuhns, and I really want to thank all of you, my colleagues, especially the Council President Nancy Florine, Education Chair Craig Rice, and all the committee chairs for getting us through a very collaborative and thoughtful process. Well done, colleagues.